Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo. We have got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Coconino High School wrestling coach Mike Schmieder. He returns to the show to speak about the state playoffs, the program's solid class of returning sophomores, and what the future of wrestling might look like. We'll then be joined by Flagstaff High School baseball coach Michael Dobosh. He'll break down the program's pitching staff, what position battles we should look out for, and speaks about the program's next game against Bradshaw Mountain. And when we return from break, we'll be joined by Prescott High School softball coach Randall Bryan. He'll join the show to speak about the start of the season, how he's feeling about the region, and speak about the team's upcoming game against Marcos de Niza. All of that and a whole lot more coming up right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Prescott High School softball coach Randall Bryan. Coach Bryan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good morning. It's good to be back.
Well, we're very happy to have you, Coach. The Badgers finished their season last year with a 15-3 record, 9-3 in the region, which earned them a number 8 ranking in the state, along with a playoff appearance. Coach, just in general, how did last season go for you?
I think, it was probably maybe even a little above expectations because of the youth that we had on the team. But, I felt like we had a lot of promise with the players that were coming in. We had some freshmen that were key players last year for us, and some other underclassmen that it was sort of the beginning of the varsity for them. And I thought they really showed themselves well. Like I said, occasionally a little inexperienced, but I think offensively and pitching wise, we probably exceeded expectations a little bit.
You graduate 7 seniors last season. What can you say about that senior class?
Well, a lot of that senior class, unfortunately, didn't get to play a lot. That we did have a couple key seniors in that class, Michaela Reyes and Dana Seavey, who both have gone on now, and they were both big part. Both girls had played on the varsity since they were freshmen. They were integral part of the team last year. But some of the other girls were girls that came up out of the JV. It's a big jump from junior varsity to varsity. And a couple of them did really well. And a few of them probably didn't get to play as much as they would have liked to. But a lot of that was just attributed to the amount of talent we had coming in that was young freshmen and sophomores.
Well, and that's great for you, Coach. I mean, obviously, you guys have already kicked off the season. We'll talk about your wins to start off the year, but man, what great confidence you must have had coming into this season, returning such young, solid talent. You're going to get these girls for another 2 years, 3 years, depending, of course, the grade level they're at right now. But, you do return that talent, and then along with your junior Ava Halveka, which I'm sure I absolutely botched, along with Gracie Carreria, which another name I'm sure I botched, among others. But Coach, just in general, I mean, how are you feeling coming into this season, with that solid talent from last year, along with some of your upperclassmen?
we really have high hopes for this year. I think we still have some growing pains.
Okay.
The one thing about it is that I've had very few teams that have a group of players that are harder workers than these players, and have bought more into the whole ideas that we're trying to accomplish. And so I really look for them to improve. I think that we're still going to show a few signs occasionally of our youth, especially when we go up against really the more experienced teams.
Right.
I think we probably saw that. Don't want to get ahead of myself, but I think we saw that a little bit yesterday with Mingus. Mingus, pretty senior laden team that, they've been through the battles before. I think we showed a little bit of our youth in that game.
Yeah.
And I think that those are things we have to work out. We're looking forward to going over to the tournament in Bullhead City this weekend.
Right.
A lot of really quality teams there. And I think that is going to help us. I think that's what we need. We need to learn a little bit. We've been fortunate this year with some of the games that we've played in that our offense has sort of carried it. And when you play like, when you get big leads like we have been fortunate enough to do in a lot of games, it really puts the other team sort of back on their heels, and you probably don't get always the best of them. I think yesterday it showed that, when we get into that competitive situation where we're playing a team that is, a lot like we are, except maybe even more experienced, I think that's where we have some things to learn.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, Coach, one of the assistant coaches, Brian Saravo, and I work together here at Yavapai Broadcasting, and I know Brian's going to hear it because he's editing this episode, but he did tell me that you guys put up a very, very tough battle against Mingus yesterday. Like you said, we're talking to Coach after that game here on the show, but he mentioned it, that you guys were very tough, and you guys were tough for them last season. And you guys, even with the inexperience, like you said, the younger team you had last year, you still made the playoffs. This year you come in, you have a tough battle against, like you said, that very senior heavy Mingus Union team. I mean, I'll tell you what, Coach, you guys have definitely impressed at least the Marauders to start off the year. And I know you're going to get a chance to play them again, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But moving along here, Coach, I want to ask, you mentioned, of course, you guys are going to be participating in a tournament this weekend, but you did participate in the Faith Moore Memorial Softball Tournament, a beautiful day of softball in honor of Faith Moore. And just it was a perfect day. We really couldn't have asked for a better day of softball. You guys made it all the way to the semis against Sunny Slope. So I want to ask, just in general, how did you feel that tournament went? And, what did it mean to be a part of it?
Number one, I have a tremendous amount of respect, for Mingus and their program and their coaching staff. John Brown and I have been battling each other for many years, and I have a lot of respect for him. And of course, because of the situation, we were not going to miss that tournament.
Right.
We wanted to be there to honor Faith and basically to honor the community.
Yeah.
And and plus John puts on a nice tournament. We felt like we were in a situation, we hadn't played any games yet. We were getting to the point that it was nice to play some teams that we felt like matching up, that we could maybe do well against. Yeah. And then also, as you go through that tournament, you're finding that the more games you play, you start to really get into very quality teams. Yeah. In Mingus, Poston Butte, Sunny Slope, again, a very good team. And so it sort of gives you a little bit of everything that you need in the beginning of the season.
Moving along here, Coach, you guys did start the regular season off on the right foot with solid wins against Lee Williams before taking on Estrella Foothills. You're able to get a victory in that one as well. How are you feeling about that start of the season? Like I said, you guys run into Mingus Union. We already kind of talked about that, but taking just a step back, Coach, how do you feel about those 2 wins to start the year?
It's always good to get wins, especially in the region with Lee Williams. Lee Williams is young. Yep. And, I think they're, have potential to do well as, in the coming seasons. But right now they're probably a little bit young. And we, again, was one of those kind of games that we sort of took advantage offensively with that. And, makes it really tough for another team. We hit 5 home runs in that game. And,
Wow.
That's where we really, we up and down, we're pretty deep up and down the lineup, and that really makes it tough on a lot of teams. I think Estrella Foothills, they weren't a bad team. That they had some players that I thought were pretty good, and their pitching wasn't bad. It's just we happened to be on a roll at that time too, and like I said, our lineup is pretty tough. From top to bottom, it's hard to get through that lineup a lot of times without, those our players battle offensively, and a lot of them have worked really hard over the last couple of years to get better offensively. So I think that's, sort of what happened, what we saw there with those 2 games. I think it was good to build our confidence to know that we can, where we are a little bit. I think that, like I said, as the season goes on, I look at us getting better. I think offensively couldn't really ask for a lot more. Mm-hmm. Pitching wise, pretty much the same way. Estrella Foothills, we pitched Liza Legg, one of our, 2 main pitchers. And she was phenomenal. She struck out 13 in 5 innings.
Yeah.
She only faced 18 hitters.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, she was dominant in that game. And, that's another thing that makes it, pretty easy for us in some ways, is that when we get that kind of pitching performance with it, and a lot of times we do. Mm-hmm. So, it'll be interesting to see going on, where we go from here, and some of the teams that we play. I've always said, there's some really good teams down in Phoenix. But top to bottom in our region mm-hmm. is where we really face some very difficult teams. And, you have the region situation too. So you have that, there isn't any of those region games that we're not really, that each team is not up for each other and ready to play.
Well, and that's really true, Coach. The next question for me was just more your assessment of the region. Obviously, you guys have seen Lee Williams. They're still kind of rebuilding. You get a chance to play against Mingus. Obviously, you 2 going up against each other is always going to be a close battle. Your crosstown rival, Bradshaw's got a new head coach in Dave Kapka. You've got, obviously, Mojave still in the mix. You've got Coco and Flagstaff, 2 also very solid programs as well. So, Coach, just kind of early on, we've got just a couple more minutes here in the interview, but how are you feeling about the region? I know we haven't necessarily gotten into region play just yet. You've seen a couple teams, but I'm just curious, what's your assessment so far?
Well, the way it looks on paper, Coconino looks very strong. We always know that Flagstaff is going to be very strong. Yeah. And, it looks like Bradshaw has, they've started out very well. They put some pieces this year that I think are going to help them some. And obviously, that's always, you're talking crosstown rival game. The players themselves, they get up for that game, but also, there's a lot of stress on those players with that. And, I like the way our players have handled it, but, it's not easy. Yeah. They come out and they're a tough team. They're top to bottom. Bradshaw has, like I said, I think they've improved greatly over last year. And I think that, there's not a lot of holes. They've got a little more pitching this year. The one pitcher that's come in, I think is helps their team. Yeah. And, so it's the region is difficult. When you look at it, the last couple of years, and I don't see it being any different this year, that, there'll be 3 or 4 teams in our region that are in the top 12 or 15 teams in 4A.
Yeah, it's a very, very close region in the 4A Grand Canyon region for softball for sure. And it makes for a very fun competition, Coach. Like you said, you got Bradshaw coming up. Coco's still very strong. Obviously Mingus is going to keep being one of the top teams in the region. Prescott as well. So it should be a very close and competitive region this year, and we're all excited to see what happens. Coach Bryan, I got one last question for you before we wrap up. You guys are going to be taking on Marcos de Niza before taking a trip over to the tournament, which you mentioned this weekend at Mojave High School. But when you guys come back, like I mentioned, you'll have Marcos de Niza, and then you'll have Coconino. Sorry, I got my timeline a little mixed up. But I want to ask, how you feeling in going into those games?
Again, Marcos de Niza is a team that, a little bit probably on the rebuilding side, the way it looks. And we have been fortunate enough to be able to take advantage of a lot of those teams. It's like, our motto with some of that is we want to play up to what our standards and what we're capable of doing, and not think too much about the opponent. Because like I said, some of them are, it's always a tough year. Some of them are rebuilding a little bit. And, Marcos de Niza may be in that category. Yeah. Coconino, on the other hand, has always been difficult for us. And I don't see any reason why that's going to change this year. That looks like they've got, they've been doing very well. It looks like they have a young pitcher that is really helped them tremendously. And so, like I said, it's going to be a battle. We're just, we just want to go out there and try to perform at our best and compete in those games. And, hopefully we can come out on top. But like I said, those games are going to be difficult.
Yeah. Well, again, Prescott High School softball coach Randall Bryan. Coach, thank you very much for coming on the show. Safe travels this weekend to Mojave, and also best of luck against Marcos de Niza and Coconino. I'm sure we'll catch up again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And we'll hopefully be back in touch later on in the year.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Coconino High School wrestling coach Mike Schmieder right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by a very familiar face of the program. He is Coconino High School wrestling coach Mike Schmieder. Coach Schmieder, it is always great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Philip.
Well, first and foremost, congratulations on finishing the season. The Panthers were able to place fifth at state with a score of 85.5. Coach, just in general, how did you feel the season went along with the playoffs?
Yeah, so I was pretty happy with the season as a whole. I think we fell a little bit short with where I had hoped to finish at the state tournament. I was hoping to be in that number 3 or number 4 spot. But like everything, we finished strong, and I felt pretty good about it. We had a bad second day of the state tournament. We didn't do so well. And then on Saturday, the final day of the tournament, we came back and finished really well, and actually moved up from 7th place into 5th place. So I was happy about that.
Well, Coach, you talk about, you guys struggled a little bit in day 2 of that state tournament. I know there's only so much time you have to kind of, make adjustments in the practice room. It's obviously not the regular season. You're on a short time span, but I want to ask, when you're in those situations where you've had a tough day one day and you got to come back and, make up the points you lost, how do you make those adjustments mid-tournament?
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky because this year the state tournament was 3 days. And so that's not something that we're used to. Usually our tournaments are 2 days. And, you get some momentum that you can kind of build on. And so this 3-day tournament was a little bit different. We're certainly going to have to think about it if they do that again next year. That second day was long.
Yeah.
And, the kids, at least in my opinion, as I look back on it, they were kind of tired. I think the nervousness of a full day, they didn't wrestle until that evening. And, I felt like we were a little bit flat when we actually hit the mats on Saturday evening. In terms of recovering from that day on Saturday, the next day, I guess I was saying Saturday, it was actually Friday. When we got back into the gym, it was pretty easy to get things rolling because I think the kids in general were disappointed in their performance on Friday. And so they were pretty fired up. They wanted to get after it and, take some revenge out, get some of that anger out on the mat. So, in terms of making adjustments, it was pretty easy because the kids were ready to go.
You had some phenomenal wrestlers. We're going to be mentioning a bunch of names here, but I want to start with your top three. You had three wrestlers win at least 50 matches this year. Cooper French led the charge with 56. I know he is an absolute powerhouse going into his senior year next season. Anthony Escalera, he is also returning next season. He had 55 wins, and your senior Tony Hernandez also had 50 as well. Like I mentioned, you're going to get Cooper and Anthony back for their senior years next season. What do you think those two can achieve in their final year at Coconino?
Well, gosh, they've both had outstanding careers already. Both of those kids are just outstanding student athletes. I really, however they finish is going to be great just by what they've already done. And, those two are the type of kids that ask a lot of themselves. Their academics are always squared away. They're reliable in terms of practice, responsible with managing their lives outside of the wrestling room. So, great things are going to come of both of those guys. And, they had really solid seasons this year. Anthony fell a little bit short. He kind of stumbled a bit at the state tournament, but, his season was really a breakout season for him, given, what he had done last year. He put in some time in the off season, and I expect both of those guys to continue to, put time in the off season and show up next year and have a really great season again.
Well, of course, Coach, you're going to be returning, like I mentioned, Cooper French and Anthony Escalera as well. They're a part of 11 seniors who will be returning to the program next year. So just in terms of those upperclassmen that you're getting back, who else are you excited to see develop and grow further in their final year at Coco?
We had a breakout year from Reed Merrill, who's also going to be a senior next year. He won a section title, and I know his goals were to get on that podium at the state tournament, so he fell a little bit short. So I anticipate that, he'll be right in the thick of things next year. And really we've got a lot of sophomores that are going to be stepping into, kind of some leadership roles on our varsity. So I'm anxious to see who's going to put in the time in this off season to really be in a position to, place well at the section and even place at the state tournament. So I'm feeling pretty good about what we've got coming back next year.
Of course, like I mentioned, Tony Hernandez, along with 5 other seniors graduating this season. Coach, what can you say to that senior class and their contributions to the program this year?
Oh, wow. Well, 3 of the 6 seniors that we had this year have been with me since their freshman year. And actually, they've been with me even before that. A lot of them wrestled in our kids club. And so I've known those kids for a long time. And those 3 are Michael Woods, Tony Hernandez, and Nick Phillips. And those guys were just pillars of the program. They stepped in as freshmen and contributed. They've just been solid in the wrestling room and solid leaders for me. And then along the way, we've picked up some kids from other schools that have moved to Flagstaff and come to Coconino. Juan Fernandez, who had wrestled at Tuba City. Okay. He came to us last year and was just a solid young man all of last year and this year. And has been a contributor. He's worked really hard. That young guy came into our wrestling room and just put in the time and Had a really solid season. He too fell a little bit short at the state tournament of his goals, but certainly, adopted the Coconino way and represented our wrestling team well. The other two seniors that we had, Angel Rios, who was at heavyweight in 215, solid kid that had been a contributor on the football team and came out as a senior. And that rarely pans out for a guy who steps out on the wrestling mat as a senior and then contributes on the varsity level. But Angel Rios did a great job for us down the stretch. Then the other one was Ashton Husky, another kid that came to us from Gray Hills. And he stepped in this year, showed up at Coconino for his senior year and wrestled well and was in and out of the lineup too. So really proud of our 6 seniors.
Well, Coach, you mentioned that sophomore class. You also had a standout freshman in Nolan Wilson. Nolan's obviously one of 12 freshmen the program welcomed in this season. Coach, you talk about these guys stepping in as freshmen and competing really well. I think wrestling is one of the few sports where you can really have a handful of standout freshmen and sophomore, because a lot of these kids, when they're coming to you, and I'm sure you can elaborate a little bit more, they've been wrestling for years. I talked with Coach McKean at Mingus Union High School. His son, Isaac, has been wrestling for a really long time. Clint himself was a wrestler for a very long time, even before they stepped on the mat at Mingus Union. So I want to ask, Coach, as the years have gone along, you're welcoming in that freshman class this year. You talk about that solid sophomore class the season before. How seasoned are these kids coming in to your program?
Well, in the past, it's been a little bit better for us. These last couple of years with COVID has made it difficult for our club to really get rolling. In fact, we've had a bit of a gap with some of our youth wrestling because we've depended on the high school facilities, and we were a bit restricted in the last couple of years due to COVID. But, in years past, and Nolan certainly is, a representative of this, we've had a lot of kids in our wrestling room with our kids club that have been developing and getting matches. Yeah. And it really does allow them to step onto that varsity mat as a freshman. And, it's imperative to really sell the sport to these younger kids, because there's a lot of activities that they have, come the fall and winter sports. There's a lot of things that the kids can engage in. So we've got to try to sink the hook on wrestling early when they're young. So elementary school, middle school, trying to get them to buy into the sport of wrestling and enjoy it.
Again, we were speaking with Coconino High School wrestling coach Mike Schmieder. The Panthers wrapped up their season placing 5th at state. Coach, who else can we look out for next season? Anyone at the JV level you're excited about?
We had a full room, and we've got quite a good group of young kids that are going to be vying for varsity positions. I don't like to, put any added pressure on some of those youngsters of coming forward, but the kids that got varsity matches this year, we took 2 freshmen to the section tournament, Jaron Chastain and Nolan Wilson. And both of them qualified for the state tournament, which is really, big, particularly in our section. And then Nolan placed. Nolan joined a very small group of Coconino wrestlers. In fact, there's only been 4 freshmen in the history of Coconino wrestling to place at the state tournament. And so huge accomplishment for Nolan. Huge accomplishment for Jaron to even qualify for the state tournament as a freshman. So, I expect big things out of those 2 guys. The other sophomore that saw a lot of varsity time this year was Noah. We bounced him around from 190 to 215 pounds, and he was just a steady kid in the wrestling room learning. It was really his only first year, and he stepped in and did a pretty solid job. We've got a handful of those bigger guys. Evan Yazzie, he was a heavyweight sophomore, another guy that I've got high hopes for in the next couple of years. Alex Martinez, another guy that was in and out of the varsity lineup as a sophomore. Yep. Jesse Granger, 113 pounder. He placed in a couple of varsity tournaments early in the year. And then once Nick Phillips got down to that weight class, he wasn't able to beat out Nick Phillips. And so he ended up, being kind of a JV wrestler, a backup to Nick. But he's a very capable varsity wrestler that really could have been a state qualifier for us this year.
So for those who are listening in the same division that Coconino is in, it seems like things are only going to get worse for you because the program is still just as strong as it usually is. Coach, I think it's funny whenever you and I get a chance to sit down and talk before the start of the season. I told this to Coach Nolan of Bradshaw Wrestling. I said, Coach Schmieder always underplays how good his team is. You did it to me the year before, and you did it to me this year as well, going, I don't know, it might be in a transition year. Then you guys placed fifth in state, and it's like, come on, Coach, your program's fantastic. But, you guys really are continuing to grow. And like you said, hopefully welcoming in more freshmen this year, and we can start to alleviate some of those COVID restrictions. Like you said, so much talent throughout this roster. You get a guy like Nolan Wilson, like you said, who's a freshman, who's already setting records and placing in places. Like you said, it's a very limited group of guys who have accomplished what he's been able to accomplish. So, this program is continuing to grow and get better year in and year out. But Coach, I want to talk about the offseason. Where are you at with the offseason plans? Will we see you guys participating in any offseason tournaments or matches? How's your offseason plan changed throughout the years? Just in general, what are we doing now?
Yeah, so it's critical, right? The off season is critical. I think I've said it to you before that summer wrestlers make winter champions, and so we've got to continue to try to get mat time in the off season. I put the challenge to the kids every year to try to get 40 to 50 off season matches, and that hasn't changed. When Coach Popham and I were running the program, it was the same thing. And it's the individuality of the sport. And, no surprise, if you look at, I have a board up in our wrestling room that shows the off-season match count for each kid. And if you look at the kids that were in the top 4 spots on last year's off-season match count, they all got on the state podium. Yeah. And so, I think it sets a really solid example for the younger kids that are below them, that they've got to get those off-season matches if they want to get on that state podium. Yeah. And so, then it's on us to provide them with those opportunities. And, we've got some plans. We'll have a few kids wrestling this weekend, to try to qualify for the state freestyle team and go represent Arizona at the high school freestyle nationals there in Fargo, North Dakota. Oh. And, we'll have Cooper French is going back to Virginia Beach to wrestle in the junior nationals in folk style. And so, we've already got things happening. We've got a couple of trips planned where we'll take a full team and try to make it kind of a fun team bonding event and get a lot of matches. So we did that several times last year as well. We went to Tucson. We went over to the White Mountains a few times. Spent a lot of time wrestling down at Mingus High School as well on Saturday mornings. Yeah. And, we'll stay the course. We'll keep doing the same things that we've done in the past and see what kids, kind of embrace that challenge to, get those off-season matches so they can come into next year as, somebody who's a bit seasoned on the mat.
Again, we were speaking with Coconino High School wrestling coach Mike Schmieder. Like I mentioned, the Panthers able to place 5th at state this season. Coach, I know this is a question that's going to result in a much, it needs to have a little bit more of an elaborated answer, but I really want to ask you, you've been around the sport of wrestling for a really long time as a player and now as a coach. You've seen the wrestling, you've seen it grow, you've seen it change, kids come in and out of your program. I want to ask from your perspective, I asked Coach Moran, the former basketball coach at Coconino, the same question. Where do you feel the future of wrestling is going? Like, what direction do you think it might be going?
Well, I feel like, the kids coming in today, they've got a lot more distractions than kids in the past. Just seems like a lot of the issues that these youngsters are dealing with are, more complicated than what kids 10, 15, 20 years ago were dealing with. And, I think that puts a little bit more pressure on us as coaches and also the environments of, athletics like wrestling. But I got to say, This year, the group that we had and the hard work and commitment that they put into the sport was, on par with kids, 20, 30 years ago. And, the commitment to something bigger than themselves is still relevant today. And, I think that is really what secures the future of wrestling, right? Yeah. Is kids buying in and that's bigger than themselves. And so, I feel good about it. I really do. I think wrestling is, it's difficult. And, we've seen it with some of these other programs in the North that when they lose a little bit of continuity with the coach, man, they quickly fall off. And so, it's important for the wrestling communities to continue to foster the growth of our sport and the exposure of the sport, because it's a bit of an underworld. A lot of kids don't get exposed to it. And so I think it's really imperative on coaches in general, particularly at the high school level, to really foster the wrestling community in not only their town, but, in the regions, Northern Arizona and in the state of Arizona. Because if we want to continue to have kids, I went and watched the Pac-12 wrestling tournament this last weekend. It was great to see 4 or 5 of Arizona's finest high school wrestlers, from years past representing different Pac-12 teams. It was really heartwarming to see that, that Arizona has kids that are capable of wrestling at the Division I level.
Coach, is there do you think there'd be any technical changes or any kind of changes to how the sport is taught as we go forward? I mean, is there a specific style of wrestling that's starting to become more popular?
Wrestling is getting more and more technical. I mean, that's just the evolution of the sport. I think that as a coach, it's more and more challenging, and I like it. It's really a learning process. It's constant. Watching. In fact, this last weekend, watching the Pac-12 tournament, I saw some things that we've already tried to work on in the wrestling room in terms of what kids are doing from the top position and things. So it's a technical game, and it's going to continue to get more technical. I think that's just part of sports in general, right? As things evolve, they become more technical, and I think wrestling fits right into that. So as far as evolution or change, you have to be willing to be coachable as a coach. You gotta learn with the times and try to help kids also, transition to being more technical.
Well, Coach Schmieder, as always, it's great getting a chance to talk with you at the end of the season. Congratulations on finishing another successful year at Coconino High School. I look forward to having our conversations again in the summer, talking about summer workouts and getting ready for the start of that winter season. You run a fantastic program. You're a wealth of knowledge, and it's really always great to get a chance to speak with you, Coach. One of the great coaches here in Northern Arizona for these multiple fantastic programs here throughout the state of Arizona. And like you said, it's already making its way to the college ranks. Arizona State University, University of Arizona. I mean, we've got some great wrestling here in the state of Arizona, and it's led by one of these guys right here in Coach Mike Schmieder of Coconino High School. Coach Schmieder, thank you very much, sir, to put it shortly.
Thanks, Philip. We appreciate the exposure, and I really appreciate the kind words as well.
We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Flagstaff baseball coach Michael Dobosh here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year.
A new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Flagstaff High School baseball coach Michael Dobosh. Coach Dobosh, welcome back onto the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, we're very happy to have you, Coach. The Eagles finished their season last year with an 18-1 overall record, a 12-0 region record, earning them the number 5 rank in the 4A, along with a region title. The Eagles also got a trip to the playoffs. Coach, just in general, if you want to summarize the playoffs, and also how did you feel the season went last season?
Well, yeah, I mean, the season was great. I mean, obviously 18-1, kids played super hard and competed every game and, just had a great year, 12-0 in the region. You don't see that very often. So, you just can't say enough about those kids, particularly the seniors, the leadership there. So playoffs, we played St. Mary's in the first round and handled them pretty well. Justin threw that game. I think it was a 10-0 game after 6 innings or something like that. So, and then we went down and faced South Point, and South Point's really good baseball program, really good team. Danny does a great job down there. So that game, we started that game off well. I think we took the lead in the first inning, 3-0. Silas hit a 3-run home run in the first inning and maintained the lead up until the 5th. And then we made a few mistakes. I think Silas got a little tired there, and they eventually took the lead and then won the ball game. But even with that loss, you can't say enough about those kids and that team. So.
Well, Coach, I want to talk specifically about that senior group in just a little bit. Actually, I'll just ask you now. I have my questions out of order. But, Coach, that senior class, you mentioned a few names there. Obviously, Silas Cleary, a huge name for you last year. Justin Hansen, the big lefty who threw about, 94-plus for you at the high school ranks. I don't know where you're finding these kids, Coach. But I just want to say, do you have anything else to say to that senior class and their contributions to last season?
Yeah, it's just, it's their dedication. I mean, it goes a long way to where they, the hard work they put in and where they ended up their senior year. Obviously Justin and Silas, but, you got Sam Schmidt, Gabe Faust, Ryan Tagle came on board and played for us. And, Daniel Woods was a big part of that team. So, I mean, there's a lot of kids that, did put in a lot of time and effort and got us to that point. So, you're going to miss those guys. You look forward to the next year's group, next year's seniors as well, but you're definitely going to miss those guys.
Well, I'll tell you what, Coach, the 4A Grand Canyon region is definitely not missing those guys, but I know your program definitely is. Flagstaff, of course, speaking with Flagstaff High School baseball coach Michael Dobosh. Coach, how'd the offseason go? Were you able to welcome in some new faces? I got a chance to speak last week to Coach Tyrone Johnson, and he was talking about how he welcomed in a great class of freshmen to his basketball program. So I just want to ask, were you able to also add a few intriguing freshmen to the JV ranks or possibly up at the varsity level? It doesn't necessarily have to be just freshmen, but was the program able to welcome in some new faces in the offseason?
Yeah, for sure. We have a really good group of freshmen, incoming freshmen. Connor Iniguez, Payne Lowry, Connor Smith. There's just a lot of really good freshman ball players. We even have one up on the varsity, Drew Smith, who's a big-time hockey player in Northern Arizona and in Arizona, is going to help us out on the varsity level. Both.
That doesn't sound like a sentence that's supposed to go together, Coach. Hockey in Arizona.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's a strange thing, but yeah, they do play hockey here in Arizona, and he's a really good hockey player. So. And we're happy to have him with us on the varsity as well as a pitcher and an infielder. So definitely a good group of freshmen. We're excited to see, what they can do in their 4 years here at Flagstaff High School. On the varsity level, we've also added some new kids like Heath Lopez, who will be an infielder and a pitcher for us. Jaden Smith is another kid who's worked really hard. We're going to he'll see some time on the mound for us. Silas Richmond, Caleb Clifton, some really good talent coming in, and they're going to fill those spots that we need to get filled. So, well,
like I said, you graduated 8 seniors last year. You do return some solid names. I'm sure you mentioned a couple of them: Teague Van Dyke, Tristan Figueroa, Justin Cardasco, just to name a few of the guys that you're getting back this season. How are you feeling about this group this year, Coach?
Yeah, we feel good. I mean, obviously there's a long way to go. We've only played a few games in the season, and the kids have to show what they can do on the field. We can talk about it all we want at practice and here at school, but they'll have to go out there and perform. But we're real happy. The coaching staff's real happy with the kids who have taken over for the seniors that we lost last year. And the names that you mentioned, Teague Van Dyke's going to step in and play some shortstop. Probably be our number one on the hill. That's going to be a big part of who we are this year. Justin Cordasco playing a little bit of outfield and a little bit of first base for us is going to be a huge part. Spencer Smith playing third base, is going to be a huge part of what we do. Tristan Figueroa behind the plate. You can't say enough about that kid. He had a great year last year. We expect the same this year. So Chad Philpott, outfielder. Again, these kids are great kids, hardworking kids, and we look forward to seeing what they can do their senior year.
Well, Coach, you guys started the season off, as you know, in the Wayne DeCombs preseason West Side Invitational. What do these preseason tournaments do, or excuse me, what do these preseason tournaments tell you about the season coming up? And how did you feel the team fared in that invitational?
Yeah, it's good to get all the kids together. In the off season, you have some kids playing football, some kids playing basketball, kids all over the place. So it's good finally to get all the kids, the varsity kids together and just to kind of see what they can do together, see how they compete. Here in Northern Arizona, sometimes we're outside practicing in the early season. Sometimes we're not. We've not been able to get on the field here lately due to the snow, and we have more snow coming this weekend. So it's good to get down there, play 4 games again, see how the team interacts both on and off the field, and then address the things that we need to work on.
Coach, how did you kind of get involved with that invitational? Was it somebody just reaching out to you? Is it a tournament you're usually a part of? How did that relationship develop?
Yeah, I know the head coach at Tolleson runs the tournament, Scotty Richardson. I know him pretty well from doing some Sun Belt. I used to coach the Sun Belt, which is the all-star team that goes back to Oklahoma every year.
Okay.
And so I worked with him in that arena and through the AZBCA. So he gave me a call, reached out to me early in the school year and asked if we were interested in coming, and jumped at the chance. It's a great tournament. You're playing really good competition, as you saw from our schedule, Sunrise Mountain, Boulder Creek. So you're playing really good competition on really nice fields. And again, like I said, it gets us 4 games right away and see what we can do.
Again, we are speaking with Flagstaff High School baseball coach Michael Dobosh. The Eagles officially kicked off their season last week against Tempe High School, starting off the year with a 7-0 victory against the Tempe Buffaloes. Coach, how did you feel about that victory last week against Tempe?
Yeah, great win to start the season. They threw their best kid at us. He's a pretty good pitcher, big kid, throws, probably low 80s with a good breaking ball. So it was good competition for us. We had a few kids step in for us. We were missing a few kids due to different reasons, so we had some really good performances from some of our backups. We have it's kind of funny, the coaching staff kind of got together and called it the next man up mentality. We're missing a few starters, next guy in, and they did a great job. Nick Lopez stepped in for us. Chad Philpott stepped in behind the plate for us. Luke Wilson stepped in for us. So, it was a great opportunity for some kids to get some playing time, and we got the win as well. So that was good to see.
Well, you had Caleb Clifton, the junior, up on the mound through 6 innings, gave up 3 hits, had 8 strikeouts. A pretty strong outing from him to start the season. So, what do you think Caleb's going to provide to the rotation this season?
Yeah, he looks to be, probably our number 2 in the rotation. Behind Teague, him and Bodie probably fit that role. Bodie Meyer as well. So, he threw well against Tempe, commanded the strike zone, threw all of his pitches for a strike, which, you need to do as a high school pitcher. We're looking for really big things from him, and it was exciting to see him kind of put everything together in that performance.
Any position battles, Coach? You mentioned a few guys obviously coming off of different sports, returning back to the baseball field. They're trying to get their baseball legs under them, if you will. But are there any position battles that we should be looking out for early here in the season?
Yeah, I think, the outfield was a big area for us. We graduated 3 seniors last year from the outfield. So we're looking for guys to step in, like Justin Cordasco, Chad Philpott, Nick Lopez, Connor Stickler, Leighton Hagerman, who played tennis previously, but has decided to play baseball this year. So Silas Richmond, again, we're looking for those guys to step up. And, particularly in the offensive area, the offensive side of the game. So hopefully we can figure out and kind of solidify the 3 or 4 outfielders that'll be playing out there mostly. And, we'll see how that goes here early on in the season.
Coach, like I said, obviously we both talked about it. You got guys coming off of other sports. You got one guy coming from the tennis court, coming over to baseball. So I'm going to try to find a question here, but essentially, Coach, I want to ask, when you're in those situations this season where guys are coming off of sports, they potentially think, okay, third base is open for me. I'm going to just slide in and play third. But like you said, that next man up mentality where you've got kids who, sophomore finding his way up to the varsity, junior finding his way up to varsity, trying to find that playing time. How do you strike that balance with those kids who are coming off of other sports and trying to get caught up to the kids who are playing baseball year round?
Well, I think you first have to have, a real honest conversation with those kids, and just kind of let them know where we think they're at, and what they need to improve on as the season progresses, and give them a chance to kind of get their baseball legs underneath them, so to speak, because a lot of the kids, they haven't played since the summer. They played football, then they went into basketball, and now they're here in baseball. And so they haven't probably touched a baseball or hit a baseball in, almost 6 months. So, having those honest conversations with them, making sure, our coaching staff does a really good job of getting together and talking about each player and where we think they can impact the game for us the best. And then going and having those conversations with them.
Coach, how about the JV level? What are you expecting from your lower levels this season?
Yeah, JV and freshman level, we're expecting really good seasons from them. There's a lot of great ball players down there. Kids like Kevin Kennedy behind the plate on JV, Lance Henry playing first base and third base on JV, Connor Smith as a freshman on JV. We think he's going to be a big time arm for us eventually. And like I mentioned earlier, the freshman kids, Connor Iniguez, Payne Lowry, Canyon Kirkman, Parker Clifford, just to name a few. There's a bunch more down there, but we're looking for really big things from them as they enter their high school season. So,
what can you say about the coaches down at the lower levels, Coach? How are they preparing these kids for that next step?
Yeah, Coach Vinny Coach Armanino on the freshman level does a really good job with those young kids. We have a philosophy here at Flagstaff High School on the freshman level. We want to see, kids play. And so if we're going to keep you at that level, you're going to get some playing time just to see what you can do. And Coach Vinny does a really good job. He's also a big part of our off-season program. He works with the kids in the summer and in the fall as well. Coach Fernandez is a teacher here, does a great job with the JV kids as well. Once they get to the JV level, we're starting to kind of figure out where they're probably going to play, what we think they're going to do on the varsity. And so Coach Fern does a really good job of making sure we put those kids in those positions and try to evaluate what they can do in terms of, how they're going to transition into the varsity, either, later on that season or possibly the next year.
Do you feel it's a benefit, Coach? Obviously you're a teacher. Coach Vinny's a teacher as well. Do you feel it's a little bit of a benefit to have your JV coaches also be educators here, kind of being getting that real one-on-one time with your players? Do you feel like you've seen a benefit with that?
Yeah, a huge benefit. Kids can stop by my room anytime they want. They have a problem. They want to talk baseball. They want to talk life. So yeah, I think it's a huge benefit to have coaches on campus. We've kind of gone away from that. I think as a society, I guess is the best way to put that. A lot of schools are hiring off campus coaches, which is fine. There's great off-campus coaches as well, but it definitely helps in terms of just the growth that we see with kids, not only on the field, but in the classroom and in their life. If they have a coach that they can come talk to or hang out with, or get some help during the day. So.
Yeah, it's always great to build those connections, as throughout the years, just getting closer and closer with your team and allowing them to have that entire, I don't want to say strategy, but because it's not the word I'm looking for, but, just to have that opportunity to go in and talk to you for issues and kind of see you a little bit outside of the game as well. So, like you said, it's just building up that rapport with your players. But Coach, again, we're speaking with Flagstaff High School baseball coach Michael Dobosh. You guys wrap up a doubleheader this week against Mojave before taking on Bradshaw and Deer Valley. We're talking to Coach Dobosh before those matchups. But Coach, how are you feeling against Mojave? Obviously, you're going to see them in the region along with Bradshaw Mountain and then Deer Valley as well. I almost said Bradshaw Bob. That's Coach Bob Young's nickname that has been, he doesn't like it, but it's a nickname that has been gifted to him by another broadcaster of ours. But sorry, I'm getting off track here. How are you feeling about those matchups, Coach?
Yeah, we're not taking anything for granted. Going 12-0 last year, we always preach to the kids, this isn't easy. The games were close. There were a number of games where we were coming back late in the game from being down. So we're definitely not taking anything for granted. Our region is very tough. You see that in terms of how many of our region teams make it to the state playoffs and how successful they are every year. So, we have Mojave coming up this weekend. We'll see what the snow does for us in terms of whether or not we're going to be able to get that one in. But it's next game and one game at a time, like all coaches say. So we're looking forward to getting on the field again and seeing what we can do.
Well, Coach, we got a chance to sit down with Eric Casada, the baseball coach for Mingus Union, last week, as well as we kind of begin our coverage of baseball as the spring season kicks off. So I want to ask, he mentioned a few teams that he's looking out for. I'm going to ask you the same question. How are you feeling about the region in total? Obviously, you'll get your first crack at region play with Mojave potentially, along with Bradshaw as well coming up this week. So I just want to ask, how are you feeling about the region?
Yeah, I think Bradshaw is going to be tough. I saw their scores down in the Valley last weekend, and it looked like they were playing some really tough teams and beating them. So I know they're going to be a tough team in our region. I think Coconino is going to have a good year. They've got a really big senior class over there. And so I look for them to be in the lead there. And hopefully, obviously we think we can compete with anyone, and we're going to go out there and see if we can't repeat as region champions this year.
Well, Coach Dobosh, I appreciate you coming on the show to give us an update here on the team. I wish you nothing but the best of luck. I'm sure we'll touch base when the Eagles travel down to play against Mingus Union. But I want to thank you again very much for taking the time to talk about the team.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
That's going to do it for this episode of Off the Bench. I'm your host, Philip Catalfamo, wishing you a great rest of your week. We'll be back next week with a great slate of guests right here on Off the Bench. See you next time.